What's good, everyone? How's it going? Hopefully, you guys can see and hear me okay. I am streaming through something I don't use very often. I'm actually using Zoom today. What's good, everyone? How's it going? Oops. Hold on one second. Hopefully, you guys can see and hear me okay. Okay, do me a favor. Let me know that you can see and hear me okay. Drop a comment if you would. I've had some tech challenges lately. I was actually trying to do this news story that I want to cover today a few days ago, and I actually recorded it twice, and both times were muffled, and I just gave up. I deleted them. But in actuality, I'm so glad that that happened because I want to respond to a video um, that I watched. I think it was yesterday, in which Andrew Wilson and his wife, Rachel Wilson, were on Tim Pool's podcast, Timcast IRL, and they were talking about Pastor Rich Tidwell. And I just couldn't resist because the information was so false and their logic is so flawed that I had to do a response video. So that's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at this video. We're going to be talking about everything that's going on with Pastor Rich Tidwell and what that means for the movement. And yeah, so buckle up. Do me a favor though, drop a comment. Let me know that you can see and hear me okay. And then also, let me know where you're watching from, if you would. I know we got more and more people that are waking up to this truth, and it's always cool to see what parts of the world you guys are in. Sometimes we are able to even connect people. So that's pretty cool. But do me a favor again, hit that thumbs up, leave a comment, and then if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. Please check and make sure that you haven't been unsubscribed. The bigger the channel grows, the bigger the guests that I can get. So it's the one thing that you can do, the free thing that you could do to help me out is to grow the channel so that I can reach out to bigger and bigger guests and we can continue to spread this message. So, if you guys haven't seen what's going on, this might be the most important week our movement has ever had. I mean, yesterday I looked at that I don't know if I pronounced that right, but there's a media company, Protest IA, Protesta. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but they kind of did a hit piece on Pastor Rich Tidwell and his two wives. And it had over 2.9 million views just on that one story alone. I'm sure it's well over 3 million or maybe much higher than that even now. And there were thousands of posts. I'm talking Mark Driscoll was talking about it, Mike Winger, Ben Shapiro did a whole segment on it. This is literally a national conversation now. This is the moment that we've been waiting for, that we've been working for, that we've been praying for. And but it's also I want you guys to be aware that, just like the Gandhi saying goes, first they ignore you, then they mock you, and then they fight you, and then you win. We're kind of in the mocking phase at this point, but next comes the fighting phase, and you're going to need to be ready for that because it's coming. They're going to come against us, and it's not going to be pretty. So actually tonight, I have a program called The Man of Options. Bunch of Christian guys that love the Lord, but that are also aware of the truth about biblical marriage. And it's a course that really kind of teaches you how to level up in all the different areas of your life so that you would be a man that a woman would gladly share. But we also talk about how to navigate this this world with the belief that we have, because it's really not built for someone who have this belief. From the way you get married, you know, the legality, your vows, all kinds of things that we navigate. And we're going to be talking about that tonight and how to prepare ourselves for the challenges ahead. So that being said, if you want to join us on tonight's our weekly call. We do a group call every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can start a 7-day free trial. The link will be in the description of this video or maybe pinned to the top. But we have about 27 guys, 30 guys, something like that right now in the program. And it's great. It's great to be around other like-minded brothers that believe what you believe. It's great for the community, but it's also good to learn from each other because people have figured things out and they are able to share it with the rest of the group. So yeah, we're going to be talking about that tonight. But I actually put up a poll today on my social media, on all my social media. I think I put it up. I put it up on all my platforms, and it was, I mentioned ladies. I said, I have a bunch of great guys in my program. I said, would you be open to becoming a second wife to a man if he was everything that you ever wanted? And surprisingly, I'm getting way more yeses than I am no. I put yes, no, and possibly. So actually on Instagram, I'll just look at it right now. It was 71% yes last time I looked. Let's see here. Yeah. Okay. So we dropped down to 62% yes, 25% no, and 12% possibly. But as this movement continues to spread and more people become aware of this truth, that number is going to rise. I believe that we're in the beginning of seeing the fulfillment of Isaiah 4:1. It says 7 women will take hold of one man. But in order for that prophecy to come true, there's got to be a lot of things happen between now and then. And one of the things that are going to happen is it's going to have to be somewhat normalized. Women need social validation. This is what everybody's, well, maybe not everyone, but most of y'all probably heard that women want what other women have. Okay. Because they want that social validation. Because if a woman wants a man, or if he's married, and I'm actually going to do a response video to this, they did a study where they showed women a picture of a man, and, like 59% of them found him attractive. But when they said that he was married, it went up to like 90%. It literally went up, like almost doubled. And it's because when a woman sees that a man has another woman has already, approved of him, it tells her that he's a good leader. He's a protector and a provider. This is true across the animal kingdom. They call it mate choice copying. So in the chimpanzees world, which I think they're our closest relative as far as DNA, the female chimpanzees don't want the single male chimp that's lonely, hoping, that he's going to get a girl. They want the chimpanzee with all the girls, because again, it signals to them that he is a good leader and he's strong, and he's going to be able to protect and provide. So this is true in our world too, because when you've heard me talk about the 80-20 thing, where 80% of the women are sleeping with 20% of the men. And that's for the exact same reason, which again is why polygyny is such a good solution, because it allows women to express their desire, their hypergamous nature, in a very righteous and ethical way. So anyway, that being said, I don't even know why I said that, but if you want to start a free trial on the Man of Options, you could just go to manofoptions.com, or you can find the link in the description of this video. But with no further ado, let's get into the Andrew and Rachel Wilson on the Tim Pool podcast, talking about Rich Tidwell. And we're going to break that video down a little bit. And my purpose of doing these lives is because this is all I do, guys. I make content around biblical marriage, and I have a course and a community around biblical marriage. So all I think about is, you know, human nature and why God permitted this, and seeing, trying to frame it in such a way that it makes sense for people. So I'm trying to give you the ammunition, the arguments, the framing that you need, because if someone asks you what you believe, I want you to be able to explain it to them. I want you to be able to defend this position to your friends and family when the time comes. This isn't the time to shrink back. This is the time to take the hill. So, you know, if you're so inclined, I would even challenge you to go as far as post publicly about your beliefs, because we need more people to stand up in order to, take down this false doctrine that's been so bad for the world. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to share my screen. Where are we at? I'm going to share my screen and we're going to watch this video together. Okay. Let's see here. Hold on one second. There we go. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see that. I haven't even checked the comments. Do me a favor, leave a comment. Let me know that you can see and hear me okay, just so I know that I'm coming through all right. I don't see any comments yet, but I could be missing it. Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna keep rolling. So let's watch this video. Here we go.
Rich Tidwell, a pastor in Canton, Missouri, has sparked an online debate about the acceptance of polygamy in Christianity and whether or not it is biblically justified. He said, "I have two beautiful wives." To the expected amount of backlash, he recently made an announcement on his Instagram page that his second wife is expecting his 8th child. All right, this is kind of what I was saying earlier, even though obviously we disavow this guy's not talking about real Christianity. There was a time when even the barbarians wanted children. He says, "I have two beautiful wives," Tidwell wrote in a long entry. "We are thrilled for what the Lord has done for our family." All right, so firstly, I don't know what his argument is, but I assume he's actually probably making some version of the argument that the left will often make when we talk about marriage and biblical morality, which is the Bible has polygamy in it. Not everything that the Bible describes is something it's recommending that you do. In fact, a lot of what's described, it's from Trent Horn, a lot of what's described in the Bible is stuff you're not supposed to be doing. It's a cautionary tale. Or it's just descriptive. Yeah, exactly. It's just descriptive.
Right.
So let's just pause there, because that is an argument that you hear the most is, you know, don't confuse descriptive with prescriptive, which is exactly what their side does when they try to go back to Adam and Eve. They say, well, if, you know, you were supposed to have multiple wives, God would have made more women for Adam than just one. Well, isn't that just descriptive? Isn't that exactly what you're doing? You're confusing descriptive with prescriptive. But and on top of that, it is prescriptive. So it's completely prescriptive. When you look at Exodus 21:10, he says, if a man takes an additional wife, he must not deny the first food, clothing, and conjugal rights. How is that not prescriptive? God doesn't regulate sin. That's like saying, you know, imagine if you got a prescription at Walgreens and it says, do not take this on an empty stomach. Like, it's telling you how to do it. In addition to the fact, Exodus 22:16, one of the strongest cases for biblical marriage. If a man sleeps with an unbetrothed virgin, he must marry her. It doesn't say if he's not married. It's like, no, if you take her virginity, she's yours. You got to take care of her. That's a prescription. Also, levirate marriage. If your brother dies and he leaves a widow without a child, you have to marry her and give her a baby. You have to impregnate her. Again, a prescription. So anytime they say that, it's because they haven't studied. They're just parroting what they've been told, and they actually haven't studied. All right, so let's keep going.
Right. So to me, this is not all that shocking. It seems shocking because it exists in one direction. But for decades, we have been seeing people try to claim that the Bible doesn't actually say what it says about God's plan for marriage, about sexuality, etc. You know, my particular perversion is permissible. I don't know. Who are we to change it, right?
My perversion is permissible. Where does the Bible ever call it a perversion? Where does the Bible call it perversion? Why do we see it repeatedly practiced by the men who were the closest to God in all of human history and never a word of condemnation? This is the thing that I would ask anyone that pushed back on this if I were you. What sin is it? What sin is polygyny? Let them answer it. The majority of them will probably say adultery. Okay, well, let's go with that. So let's break this down. So adultery wasn't a light sin. It wasn't like a sin that people were going to overlook and, you know, like stealing a pack of gum. It was a sin that was punishable by death. Okay. It was a very serious sin. So you're telling me that this super serious sin that was punishable by death was just overlooked because there wasn't a single person ever punished for having multiple wives in all of Scripture. Is that what you really want to believe? Is that what you're going with? I mean, you'd have to be pretty naive to think that. So again, what perversion? When they say that, they're literally accusing the greatest heroes of our faith of being perverts.
We've been told for decades.
Well, I mean, honestly, it's hard for me to care as much anymore. I used to hit this issue hard on polygyny, with the multiple wives thing. And you're right, it's not biblical and it's completely immoral. It's
not biblical. Andrew, do you know that the Bible was written primarily by men with multiple wives? How is it not biblical when they, the ludicrousness of that statement alone, how is it not biblical when we see it all over the Bible?
And it's totally unjustified. But didn't they just marry 4 guys?
It's so stupid.
They just married 4 guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Throuple.
Yeah, they just married. They just married.
They're just short of a restaurant.
Yeah. We did that. Where was that at? Do you remember?
Oh, it was somewhere in Europe, I think.
Yeah, just married
wasn't
4 guys.
here.
Yeah.
And someone's probably gonna sell them a baby.
But the thing is like,
it doesn't become a ridiculous.
I think it was the UK.
leftist logic can't ground any of this. So leftists can't really tell you that this is like, well, I could do that with homosexuality under leftist rule. So that makes no sense as an argument.
Right.
Ultimately, this, right, you're going to see more of it under leftist rule because they're going to have less and less way to combat it with any sort of ground. Like, how could they tell them no?
Yes.
They can't tell them no. That if they go to them and say, look, how could this possibly be worse for society than homosexual monkeypox? right? They're not, the argument back's going to be, well, like, I guess it's not, and you do you, bro, as long as you're not hurting anybody.
My dad called it.
I personally can't stand when they lump homosexuality in with polygyny because one is clearly regulated in the Bible and one is clearly condemned in the Bible. And one, we do not see the patriarchs of our faith being homosexuals. We don't see men, the heroes of our faith sleeping with other men. We don't see it, but we do see them marrying multiple wives repeatedly. And I know people will say, well, that, you know, you're just filled with lust. I'm like, so you're just saying that all these men that were the closest to God, that wrote the Bible, that God called a friend, that he called a man after his own heart, some of them he spoke face to face with, that they were all perverts and lustful, and you're so much holier than them. Like the pride in that, you know, like the naivety, number one, but it's so prideful to think that you're so much holier than the men. Like these were the best of the best. And Andrew Wilson, who, you know, married Rachel Wilson, who I heard was married before. I'd love to know why was she divorced? Because I have a strong feeling that it wasn't biblically lawful, and that would make Andrew Wilson an adulterer and Rachel Wilson an adulterer. But I don't know. If anybody knows, drop it in the comments.
On Pox.
But why we need you know, monogamy more than anything else is because we have an equal distribution of men to women. And you really want to make sure that the underclass is married and having children, because otherwise they start killing people in a big way. Collectively, they start.
Okay, this is great. This is the part I really wanted to get to because I have a great article. This is the article I shared the other day. I want to share it with you, and it's perfectly fits with what Andrew's saying. But before we get into that, I made a video about this, and it was about the imbalance, because what he's saying is, well, if polygyny was the way it was, you know, supposed to be, why would we have, you know, 50-50? Well, first off, a quick Google search will tell you that it's not 50-50. We have somewhere around 85 to 95 men for every 100 women on average in each country. But when you add in all the other factors about men being incarcerated at a higher rate, men definitely die younger than women. We are drug addicts at a higher rate. We are oftentimes just selfish. You know, they don't want to be responsible for another human being, and they'd rather fornicate. And some men are just completely incapable of marriage, homeless at a higher rate, all of those things. So when you really add it up, there's a huge imbalance. There may be, we don't know the exact number, but if I had to guess, 20 to 30, 40% max of good men that would be capable of marriage to 100% of women. Okay. All women need a husband. I know that's not popular to say, but singleness is not for women. It's for men. Okay. Women need a husband. God wanted to ensure all of his daughters had a covering, which is why he permitted polygyny, because it would cover the imbalance. So Andrew's wrong in saying that. Even just from a simple just logic, not 100% of men are going to be willing to get married. So yeah, even if it was 50-50, not all of them are going to sign up for it, nor are all of them going to be good at it, nor are all of them going to be straight. Right. So that you have to add all that in. Okay. So, but beyond that, I want you to hear what he says next. And we're going to debunk it because I've heard this so many times. This is what he said on my debate with him. He said this exact thing. And I didn't have the study at the time because it just came out, but we're going to show you how wrong he is.
Are killing people because one of the biggest accesses of resources for men isn't the money. And it isn't the sports car, and it isn't it's sexual access. And what you get with a wife is sexual access, and that is part of the domestication of men, which allows a society to function. That's why monogamous societies do way better than polygynous societies.
False. I'm not saying that monogamous societies don't do well, but to say they do better than polygynous societies, we haven't actually done a study because we don't legalize it. Our best use case of a polygynous nation was ancient Israel. They went from one single man to over 2 million in just 400 years. One dude multiplied to over 2.4 million people in just 400 years. And then they overthrew Egypt, and they left, and, you know, they left Egypt and formed their own nation. That's the best use case. Where was the chaos? Where was it, Andrew? I asked him this question, and he just kind of, you know, pretended like he didn't hear it. But that's the best use case. People want to say that, oh, polygyny is chaos. Where was it in ancient Israel? Where were all these lost boys that you talk about? Did God not think of that? Let's keep going.
do because of that sexual access.
No, and it's true. And it's like to varying degrees of wholesomeness, because you can have guys who say, I genuinely just want to have a family. And so they get married. And then there are some guys who they're just trying to have sex, but in a monogamous culture, that drive is oriented towards something productive instead of destructive.
Which is producing.
Yes, producing.
Children.
Literally.
Literally.
That's
yes.
right. And so
Sorry.
I just want to make this point. George Gilder writes about this in his book, Men in Marriage, where he points out, and this is written in like the late 80s, early 90s, I believe. But he points out that literally in every society throughout all of history, the most dangerous people around have been unmarried young men. If you can create a population of perpetually unmarried young
killers.
Men, they're going to be killers. Now, here's the thing. For corporate America, those people make great consumers. And so it seems as if there's been this effort to keep men young and unmarried, but to kind of unicize them so that they're good producers and they're not scary.
They're not
that
like,
doesn't work. They're still going to be scary, man.
Yeah, but they're not like inherently killers. That's not what I mean by that.
Of course.
But what it is it's like, where do you go? You would go into the military, you would become mercenaries, and you would be way more willing to take high risk things for high reward.
Yes.
Because that's where like the dopamine hit comes, the fun. Again, there's no resource sink, right?
Yeah.
And so
Gotta be
that's
clear,
why
this isn't like men bad. This is just
men
realistic.
good and
different.
men benevolent.
Yeah.
Actually, but my point is just to point this out is like the reason you want your young men married and producing families and you don't want them sidelined with no sexual access is because if you have like 20% of your population that's like that, you're gonna have a serious problem on your.
All right, we're going to pause it right there. So what Andrew's doing here is something that I heard Bible Marriage is referred to as napkin math. He's trying to reason why God's ways don't work. Imagine if we listened to God. What would happen if we did, we allowed polygyny into Western society? There would be unmarried men. Well, here, we're going to take a look at an article that just came out by The Independent, and it completely debunks his argument. All right, so hopefully you guys can see that. I think you can. Let's see here. Okay. All right. Sorry, my battery died on my phone. I was checking to see if y'all could see that, but I think you can. All right. So what it says is polygamy bad for society? Scientists think it could have benefits. Okay. This article just came out a few days ago, maybe like a week ago, or actually October 24th. Okay. So 2 weeks ago. But in July 2025, Uganda's court swiftly dismissed a petition challenging the legality of polygamy. Let's skip over this. This is what I want to get to here. Critics of polygamy, this is what Andrew is saying and his co-host or the host. Critics of polygamy present two main arguments. First, they contend it squeezes low-status men out of the marriage market, fostering social unrest, crime, and violence against women. Kind of what he just said. Those men are going to be frustrated and they're going to be violent. Second, it harms women and children by dividing limited resources. Okay, so let's keep going. The logic has been leading political scientist Rose McDermott to describe polygyny as evil. Other researchers such as anthropologist Joseph Heinrich even go as far as to credit Christianity's derision of polygyny as a driving force of Western prosperity. Sort of saying that's the reason that the West has been so successful is because of monogamy. So let's go down here to the really interesting part. So it said, this is how big of a research pool they had. The research on demographic modeling and an extraordinary trove of census data, over 84 million records from 30 countries in Africa, Asia, and Oceania, plus the entire U.S. Census from 1880 when polygyny was practiced in some American communities. They demonstrate that polygyny does not lock large numbers of men out of marriage. In fact, in many contexts, men are actually more likely to marry where polygyny is common than where it is rare. Huh. Imagine that. God was actually right. So there's actually more married men in the countries that accept polygyny. The narrative that polygyny leads to lonely bachelors is intuitive. Again, napkin math. In a community with equal numbers of men, if one man marries two wives, then another man must remain unmarried. Expand that across the whole society, and polygyny looks like a recipe for an army of resentful single men. Exactly what they just said. However, the trouble is that demography is not so simple. Women typically live longer than men. Men frequently marry younger women, and populations in many parts of the world are growing, ensuring younger spouses are available for older cohorts. These factors, which are characteristic of many contemporary African nations, tilt the marriage market toward a surplus of women. Exactly what I said. There's an imbalance. Under many realistic conditions, a sizable proportion of men can have multiple wives without leaving their peers out in the cold. In fact, here's the interesting part. This is the nail in the coffin. Nearly half of the countries examined, higher rates of polygyny were associated with fewer, not more, unmarried men. Only a handful of countries showed the expected positive relationship, and even then, inconsistently over time. So there it is, guys. And this is actually the PNAS. Let's see if I have that article. PNAS polygamy. They just released. Let's see here. High rates of polygyny do not lock large proportions of men out of the marriage market. There it is again, and this is this is something of national and applied sciences. This is a very reputable organization. Okay, this is like the highest level of science right here, and they did a huge study, and they found out that that argument is incorrect. And again, God is right. The hubris of someone like Andrew Wilson thinking that they understand the way things work better than the person that put the being that put this all into play. God understands human nature better than any of us. And what I've said many times on the podcast is like, when you tell men that it's monogamy only, it's too much, it's too scary, it's too big of a decision, and they just stall out in the dating market. And if you allow them to take more wives, most of them probably wouldn't even do it. I think only a small percentage of men would actually marry more than one. But when you tell them that they can't, that's where the problems come in. So again, fewer unmarried men in countries where polygyny is accepted. So let's keep going. Let's go back and see if they have anything else to say. That might be the main thing that I wanted to get to. Okay.
Your hands, where these people they're not risk averse.
Why do you think it's so easy to recruit young Muslim men?
Yeah.
Terrorist cells.
Yeah,
Why do you think it was so many
cells make terror cells?
I think of how easy it was to recruit mercenaries under the promise you'd carry off the enemy women. Right? The idea here was always the same. They were plunderer once upon a time. And so but ultimately, if you have 20%, 15%, something like this, who are not risk averse and they are high testosterone and not risk averse. Oh man.
Yeah, just
Fear mongering at its best. Okay, if you remember what this guy said back here.
as if there's been this effort to keep men young and unmarried, but to kind of unicize them so that they're good producers and they're not scary. That doesn't work. They're still going to be scary men. If you can create a population of perpetually unmarried young men,
if you can create a population of perpetually unmarried men, bad things are going to happen. And we just showed you that monogamy only produces the exact thing that he's trying to scare us of. There it is. There it is, guys. Of course, I doubt that they'll acknowledge the study, but that's the truth. I love what BiblicalMarriage has said in response to this, because he actually said something in the comment. Critics will say, we can't accept polygyny. There wouldn't be enough women to go around. And he said, you're right. Prescribed monogamy does solve the problem of not enough women to go around. But the going around isn't marriage. It's the using and discarding of women at will. Enforced monogamy ensures that there's a surplus of those. And that's exactly what we see in America, right? That's why the dating culture is a complete dumpster fire right now, is because of monogamy only, because you're getting a small percentage of men, the high level men that's determined by women, not by me. The men that women are choosing are not committing, and they're just they're literally running through cities of women. They're sleeping with dozens, if not hundreds of women, which is why we see all these Facebook groups. Are we dating the same man? Because they're all trying to catch the guys, because rather than just say, hey, listen, tell these guys they can marry more than one, and maybe they would commit. Maybe some of them would, not all of them. Some of them, again, would be unwilling. They just don't want the responsibility, but some of them would. I know I would have. I would have married my first girlfriend when I was 19. I loved her. I didn't want to break her heart. I just couldn't get my mind around one for the rest of my life. So guys, this is it. I want you to equip yourself. I want you to be ready for what's coming, because you're going to need to be able to defend it. I mean, I'm challenging everybody that knows the truth to stand up, get vocal about this. This is the time that everybody needs to unite, and you need to spread the truth. Don't fear the backlash. This is what I said in a tweet recently. Fear keeping silent if you know the truth, because on the day of judgment, the people's blood are going to be on your hands too. Now, I know some people have jobs they're afraid of losing, or maybe family members. Well, family members, I think, so be it. I don't want to see anybody lose their source of income, but you have to find a way to, support the movement, even if it's, you know, in the comments or, reaching out to Pastor Rich Tidwell, possibly even financially supporting his ministry. This guy, I definitely have a lot of respect for him because there have been other people in ministry that have done this. They've came out with the truth, that some of them have multiple wives and they said it's biblical, but then they disappear. You don't ever hear from them because of the backlash. So right now I know that Pastor Rich Tidwell is probably taking it from all sides. He was actually supposed to be on this live today with me, but he was up all night writing an article and responding to people online, and he said he needed sleep. So I will do a live with him here soon in the next couple days. But reach out to him, drop him a message on Instagram, follow him on IG or on X, and just tell him that you're praying for him because I'm sure he's getting it from all ends, and this is what needs to happen though, because anytime you're trying to affect change and you're the pioneer, you're going to take arrows. You're going to be the one that takes the majority of the arrows, but this is how it has to be for us to overturn this thing. And, I just sent him a text message and I said, this is a huge life accomplishment, what you're doing. Like literally the fact that this wasn't even talked about. In 23 years of being a Christian, I didn't hear a single person ever mention this at all. If I had heard it, I certainly would have researched it because I always deep down knew I had a polygynous nature, but I wasn't conscious of it. I mean, I knew, but I didn't want to admit that it was something that I wanted because I thought it was sin. So I just didn't even let my mind go there. But if I had heard somebody mention that, I would have looked it up and I would have found the truth pretty easily. So yeah, reach out to Pastor Rich. If you want to support, me and the content that I'm putting out, everybody that join the Man of Options. That would be the best way to support me. You can start a 7-day free trial. If you're a man that's actually considering this, or maybe you're actively pursuing it, there's no better place for you to be. We're going to save you a lot of time and heartache and a lot of mistakes that you would probably make by not being part of it. And if you're a woman and you're considering this, and I hope some of you are, because, I think a lot of women prior to, hearing about this, prior to this topic being talked about the last couple of years, I think that it was never even on their radar, Let's see. Am I still live here? Hopefully. Okay, good. I am. For a second, I thought I lost you guys. All right. Well, that's all I got, guys. I'm going to tune out. Looks like we still have a few people in here, but do me a favor, drop a comment. It helps the algorithm, helps more people find this. And I will see you on the next one. Hopefully that will be with Pastor Rich. And yeah, talk to you later.